So I think we have a lot of people already here. So let's dive into talking about Taurus UCX. So we will start by taking a look at a typical UC room nowadays. We took a 6-seater room as an example, and let's go through what type of devices we have in such kind of a room. We most likely have a room computer, whether it's a Mac Mini or an Intel NUC or whatever type of meeting room computer. You can use that computer if you don't bring your own laptop. You just take the keyboard and a mouse, log into the room computer, and you can do video conferencing or access company emails. So you don't need to use your own device. We most likely have a camera, which is either a hard codec like Cisco WebEx RoomKit, or it's a USB webcam like Logitech Brio or Hdmi IQ or any bigger PTZ camera. That's also quite common. We might have dedicated speakers, or we just use the built-in speakers of the display or one of the displays, but in some cases, people prefer the better sound experience. If people sit far away from the webcam or the codec, then we might have a ceiling array microphone or a speaker phone in the middle, on the middle of the table. We have keyboard and mouse to control the meeting room computer, and nowadays you can also control your laptop, but we'll get to that in a second. And you might have a wireless presenter like I'm using now. It's more convenient if I'm doing a presentation. I don't have to keep my mouse in my hand and just do the clicking that way. We have lots of different cables, and we have one or more signal management devices depending on what type of signal formats you want to manage. And finally, especially nowadays, we have the bring your own devices, laptops, ultrabooks, tablets. People like using their own devices in these meeting rooms as well. So let's take a look at how these rooms are used and how these rooms are built. The simplest scenario is a hard codec scenario. This room has a Cisco codec on top of the display. It's connected to a screen, but there's a meeting room PC. So in case people don't bring their own laptops, they can use the meeting room PC. We have a keyboard and a mouse and a presenter, which are directly connected to the meeting room PC, or we might have a USB hub somewhere in the table. We have an HDMI switch. So if people do bring their own laptops, they can connect it using an HDMI cable. Most likely, the HDMI cable can carry video and audio, and they can choose that over the meeting room PC. So this laptop is doing a PowerPoint presentation, and we send that signal to the codec, which shows it on screen and sends it to the other side of the world, to the other participants of the video conference call. You can see if the laptop is low on battery, then you need to find an outlet and you need to use your own charger for that laptop to charge the battery so as not to run out of power in the middle of the presentation. You can connect a second laptop to the HDMI switch. It might be charged, so you don't need a charger, but it still can only send HDMI, so video and audio. So this room is based around the hard codec, and in case you need to use a computer, you can use the room PC. Having laptops in this scenario is a fallback option. You can do that, but you're limited to sending video and audio. Let's see a soft codec version where you don't have a hard codec like Cisco. So we have a USB webcam. We might have a speaker phone because the webcams, the microphone of the webcams is not that great. So we have a lot of USB peripherals. Again, they are connected to the meeting room PC. The laptops, which might run Teams or Zoom or Skype or whatever VC codec, they can send video and audio, but they don't have access to the webcam, to the keyboard, the mouse. So people need to use the built-in webcam of their laptop, the built-in microphone of their laptop, and they need to type in. The typing noise might be picked up by the microphone, so it's not very convenient, and we need a solution for that. So I think most of you have been in a situation where you used your laptop to do a soft codec call, but you had people around you in the meeting room, and they all had to gather around behind you or next to you, so to fit inside the viewing angle or the field of view of your laptop, like you see here. Some people manage to fit in, some people don't. So What's the ideal soft codec scenario? You have the same type of peripherals, webcam, keyboard, mouse. They are in every meeting room. The problem is you don't have access to them unless you use a device, something like a universal switcher, which incorporates all of these functionalities in one box. So we have a video crosspoint and an audio crosspoint, which were done by the Hdmi switch previously. We also have a USB hub and a hole switch. We are going to talk about those functions in more detail later. Since it's a USB-C device, it might as well be a PD charger, a power delivery charger, and it can also have an Ethernet switch. So as I mentioned, this is a USB-C device, which uses USB-C to USB-C connection, and USB-C can carry video, audio, USB data, Ethernet, and power. So it's a very universal format. The USB-C is just a connector type. What circuits there are depends on the device you have. So this universal switcher handles everything in one box. And you might say, okay, I can build a similar system using discrete components. So I might still use the Hdmi switcher, and I can connect the laptop or the USB-C laptops. But if you have an Hdmi switcher and you have USB-C laptops, then you might need converter cables, USB-C to Hdmi, or you use docking stations. So if you have two laptops, then you use two docking stations. You need to have a USB hub and a USB hole switch. You need to wire up everything. All devices need to have access to the Ethernet, so you have a bunch of Ethernet cables as well. So you have all these different devices connected, but you still need to manage control. If you switch the video signals, you still need to switch the USB signals, so it's a mess. USB docking stations, they don't have EDID management and HDCP management. The AV matrix might have it, so it's not very convenient. The best way is to incorporate all of these features in a single box, and by doing this integration, you have control over everything, and you might have auto switching functionality as well. So that's the most convenient way nowadays. On his webcam. So all right, let's continue with actually showing you how it works. Jason, can I ask you to turn your webcam off so I go full screen? Thank you. And excuse me for the shaking, but I have the demo system set up right here, which represents a typical meeting room environment. So we have a single display, which would be mounted on the wall. Obviously, we have USB peripherals, as in every meeting room. We have a USB webcam on top of the display, and we have a keyboard and a mouse. They are all connected to the backside of Taurus UCX. So this is the cable of the webcam, just running behind the screen. And the keyboard and the mouse are connected using a wireless receiver. And we have a meeting room computer, which is this Dell computer. That's the meeting room PC, and it's connected to Taurus UCX with 3 cables. The first one is an HDMI cable. The meeting room PC is already booted up, so I unplugged the cable. I didn't want to make you wait for the room PC to wait and for me to log in. So it's fully booted, but I unplugged it to make it look like it's turned off. I'll plug it in momentarily. So video and audio is carried using an HDMI cable. USB functionality is provided by this blue HDMI USB cable, which goes to input number 4 as the HDMI cable. And this yellow cable you see here is an Ethernet cable, because the USB-C ports have built-in Ethernet functionality, but the meeting room computer can also be connected to Taurus UCX using a dedicated CAT cable. Taurus UCX has a built-in Ethernet switch with 3 ports. 2 are on the back side and 1 is on the front. So the incoming cable, which is connected to our company network, is this white cable, and Taurus UCX is sharing its Ethernet connection with the PC using this yellow cable. So video, USB, Ethernet, and of course the meeting room PC has a dedicated power cable, a standard IEC power cable. And then we can bring your own devices. My laptop, which is a USB-C laptop. I hope you can see it. So this laptop has 2 USB-C ports on this side and a single USB-C port on this side. So no traditional HDMI ports, no traditional USB ports. It's USB-C only. It gets charging over USB-C. It sends video, audio over USB-C, and it uses USB-C for USB data functionality. So if Taurus UCX will have room automation capabilities coming with a future firmware release, so we could start this demo by having the display turned off and the lights turned off. And Taurus UCX also has an occupancy sensor port, so it will be able to see you walking in. And as soon as by the time you sit down at the table, Taurus UCX can turn the display on, turn the lights on, and basically set up the room for you. But right now, I already have the the display turned on. And as I mentioned, no sources are connected at the moment, and you are greeted with this welcome screen. This is coming from Taurus UCX. It's actually a picture file uploaded to the memory. And when no sources are connected or the connected sources are turned off, Taurus UCX can show you this welcome screen. And as I said, it's a picture, so you can fully customize it. It can include the meeting room name, company logo, and some text-based information to help people start their meeting or control the meeting room equipment. I don't know if you've heard about MiniWeb. It's one of our control solutions. So basically, you can create a QR code, which you can read with your smartphone, and you're immediately taken to the control page of Taurus UCX. It's not ready for Taurus UCX yet, but MiniWeb will also be coming to Taurus UCX. So we stepped into the room. The display is already on, telling us what to do. Either turn the meeting room PC on, which I will do by actually plugging in the computer, which is already booted. And Taurus UCX is set up to be in auto switching mode. I have prioritized the sources. The welcome screen has the lowest priority, and the meeting room PC has a priority higher than that. So as soon as Taurus UCX saw that there's an incoming video signal coming from one of the sources, we see the image of that source. But the HDMI switchers can also do that. What they cannot do is also hand the USB peripherals over to the meeting room PC. So as I mentioned, the keyboard, the mouse, and the webcam are plugged into Taurus UCX, and there's a host switch inside. So right now, thanks to this blue cable, the meeting room PC has access to the peripherals. The keyboard, the mouse, I can drag this window around, and also the webcam, which I can show you by launching a quick Zoom meeting. There you can see me in front of the camera. So you can do your video conference, you can do your work. The computer is also connected to the internet using this yellow cable, so that's fine. If you just want to use the meeting room PC, you can do that. But what if you want to use the laptop instead of the computer, or after somebody used the computer? All you need to do is plug in a single USB-C to USB-C cable. The other end is connected to this port. So all I need to do is plug it in. The laptop is going to do some handshakes, and in a matter of seconds, you can see the image of my laptop appearing on the display. My laptop is running Teams, and we also have a feature called USB follow video. So it's not only the video signal that has been switched, but also the USB peripherals are now controlling my laptop instead of the meeting room PC. So I can use the mouse, and I'm actually online, so I can call Jason. And he answered it. There he is, using Teams. Hi, Jason. So I don't know if you've seen, but I connected the cable and I was able to start a Teams call in a matter of seconds. So it's that easy. Well, once you figure it out, it becomes easy, but figuring it out is the hard part. If I'm done with my Teams call or the work I wanted to done, I just unplug my cable. And again, thanks to the auto switching, the Taurus UCX switch back to the meeting room PC, and I can turn the webcam back on. And again, the meeting room PC has access to the webcam and the keyboard and the mouse. So at the moment, Taurus UCX is in auto switching mode. You don't need to touch it. All you need to do is set it up, set the priorities up, and use auto switching, and it handles everything for you. But of course, thanks to our open API, you can program one of our button panels, for example, the rep B511, or you can program any third-party control interface to control Taurus UCX. So those are all available options. So that's all I wanted to show you. So I'll put my camera, I'll start sharing again. And I hope most of you are convinced by the demonstration I had, but in case you're not, I have a lot of technical details for you. So let's start by mentioning, as Jason said, this is a platform or a family of devices. We have different sizes, so 2x1 for smaller rooms and 4x2 for bigger rooms, and different versions regarding input connectivity. So there are HDMI versions, HDMI plus USB-C versions, and in this demonstration we are using the 4x2 HC30 version, but in the PowerPoints we use the HC30T, which is the Dante version. So the only difference between these two is the presence of the Dante connector on this device, but other than that they have the same functions. So let's take a look at these devices in more detail. They are HDMI 2.0 compliant, so they support 4K 60 RGB up to 18 gigabits per sec, pixel perfect transmission. The USB-C ports are also capable of 4K 60 RGB, but apart from video and audio, they can also handle USB data, Ethernet, and charging using the same USB-C cable. On the USB side, you can have 2 or 4 peripheral ports. They are called Type A ports. And depending on the size, again, you can have 2 or 4 host ports. This is HDMI plus USB, and we have USB-C variants as well. As you've seen before, we have a customizable welcome screen. It takes just 10 seconds to connect to the device, upload your picture, and then it's ready to be shown. And coming soon, the Dante version, room control with an improved version of Event Manager and secure Ethernet features. So let's take a look at the front and the back. Here we have the 2 USB-C ports and the 2 HDMI plus super speed USB type B ports. So Ultrabooks and tablets can use USB-C ports and get all those functions. And traditional sources like older or average laptops can use a combination of HDMI and super speed USB type B. And meeting room computers, for example, they can also use HDMI and super speed USB type B. So these are the host ports. These are the peripheral ports, 4 type A connectors for peripherals, webcams, keyboard, mouse, you name it. The outputs are HDMI 2.0. The display devices in meeting rooms, they all have HDMI connectors, so that's fine. 3 Ethernet connectors, which are connected to an Ethernet switch at the moment. In the future, you might give dedicated roles to the different connectors, like you see by these labels: secure control LAN, utility VLAN or utility AVLAN, user Ethernet. So you will be able to define VLANs and separate the USB-C ports, and you can define those as guest Ethernet network and separate it from the control network. So those are coming. You don't need to worry about your guests accessing all your devices on the control network. You can, of course, separate them. The Dante connector, dedicated RJ45, audio out, 5-port Phoenix, and the control ports, GPIO, a dedicated occupancy sensor port, and 2 RS-232 ports, service USB and control USB, front panel buttons, and DC input connector. So those are the ports on this fully featured HC30D version. And let's see the signal layers as Jason mentioned. So we have video, audio, Ethernet, USB power, and control layers. On the left, we have the inputs to that layer, and on the right, we have the outputs to that layer. So on the input side, we have HDMI and USB-C, which is DisplayPort, which is converted to HDMI inside. On the audio layer, we can use the embedded audio of the HDMI signals, the embedded audio of these DisplayPort signals, which are coming on the USB-C ports. And in the future, we will also have a bidirectional Dante audio version, so not just the output, but also a bidirectional Dante bridge. HDMI embedded audio can go to the displays. If you don't want to use the built-in speakers, you can use the balanced analog audio, the 5-pole Phoenix, or the Dante version, which is coming soon. You can send the signal into a Dante network. On the Ethernet layer, you have 3 RJ45 connectors for Ethernet, and well, that's bidirectional, so the output, you can consider it as an output as well. And the USB-C ports have a USB Ethernet bridge, so one for each USB-C port, and that means the USB-C devices always have a permanent Ethernet connection, regardless of whether they are controlling the peripherals or not. So Ethernet and power are always available for the laptops or tablets. On the USB layer, we have the host side, so type B connectors or type C connectors. And on the peripheral side, we have type A connectors. On the power layer, we have a DC 24 volts input, and we can power the peripherals. Each type A port can supply 1000 milliamps, and the USB-C ports combined, they can output 60 watts. If you have just one laptop connected, then it can get all 60 watts. If you have 2 laptops connected, they get 30 watts each. And on the control layer, you can have GPIOs as inputs or outputs, occupancy sensor input, RS-232, sending commands or receiving commands, and the Ethernet layer can also be used to send or receive control commands. So all these different layers combined in a single box, handling all these different signal formats as an integrated solution. Now let's take a look at the layers in more detail. The video layer is a 4x2 switch. The 2 USB-C ports are carrying DisplayPort signals, so they are converted to HDMI inside, and it's a 4x2 non-blocking architecture. As with all lightware devices, I think it comes as no surprise that we have advanced EDID management and HDCP management. It's quite standard for all of our devices, so it's almost not worth mentioning. The audio layer, the embedded audio can follow the video, so you can switch any of the incoming video signals to the 2 HDMI outputs, and the embedded audio can stay in there. And we have a de-embedder. You can select any of the 4 incoming video signals to de-embed to the analog out, or in the future Dante version, a copy of that signal can also go into the Dante network. And here comes the tricky part, or the specialty of Taurus UCX. Let's start at the peripheral side. So this is where you connect the keyboard, the mouse, and the webcam. These are the ports of an internal USB hub. I also have demonstration devices here. I think most of you have seen a USB hub. So a hub with a hub, you can connect multiple peripherals to a single port of a computer. Maybe the computer only has 1 or 2 of these ports, or you took up all of those ports and you need more ports. So you use a hub, and the hub is mixing the data of all of those peripherals and send all that data to this port. But I think everybody has used a hub before. In front of the hub, between the host and the hub, we have a host switch. That's something that maybe not all of you have seen. I also have one right here. This device has multiple ports for computers instead of peripherals. So this particular box can be connected to 4 different computers, and it has 1 type A port for the peripherals. And using these buttons on the front, you can select which computer should have access to the peripheral, which is connected to this port. But of course, only 1 computer can access this peripheral at any given time. And here comes the tricky part. You can take the hub and connect it to the host switch. So you can connect multiple peripherals, and using the host switch, you can decide which computer should have access to these peripherals. That's exactly what we built into Taurus UCX, which you see here. Everything is handled inside. So only 1 computer can have access to all of those 4 peripherals. At this moment, the switch is connecting input number 1 to the peripherals. So that's how it works. All ports can do 5 gigabits per second data rate, so they're super speed Gen 1 ports, also on the input side and also on the output side. So that's the USB layer, but of course, here we have something special, but I will talk about that in more detail later. The Ethernet layer, we have 3 dedicated RJ45 connectors available on the front and the back. The 2 USB-C ports have USB Ethernet bridges inside. So this port carries Ethernet data packetized as USB data. And to the internal Ethernet layer, we also have the CPU connected. The USB-C Ethernet ports can be disabled, so don't need to worry about giving access to your guests to your whole company network. So you can disable it, and in the future, you can put these ports on separate VLANs as a guest network. Security functions are also coming, 802.1x or radius compatibility, SSH, SSL, Jason mentioned those. It's really important for people who are installing these and who are using these in UC rooms. Charging. Taurus UCX on its USB-C ports uses power delivery, USB power delivery, which is part of the USB standard. And we provide a total of 60 watts of power. If you have just one computer connected, it can take all 60 watts. If you have 2, they can take 30 watts each. Or you can actually decide to power one of those laptops and not power the other one. Powering the peripherals. You can have 2 or 4 of these type A ports. They can all supply 1000 milliamps of power. 900 milliamps is required by super speed USB. So 900 plus 100 milliamps for active optical cable consumption. So we prepared Taurus UCX for AOC cables as well. We can also do a toggle function for this power, but I will show you why that's important on a later slide. So now let's talk about the special UC room features, which we built into Taurus. There's a collection of features or functionalities which we call keep alive. So firstly, hot plug is maintained for all of the source devices, so they don't lose sync with Taurus UCX. A hot plug is always there, which means they have read the EDID, they are all set up, they are sending video at the required resolution and refresh rate and audio at the desired format. We provide a continuous HDCP handshake, and to the USB-C laptops, we also provide power. Because with laptops, the laptop might turn its display off or go into standby mode if it's not receiving power. So there are different policies for battery operation and connected to an outlet operation. So all of these sources are continuously sending their signals into Taurus UCX, and you can decide which one to send to the display or which ones to send to the displays. USB-C hosts receive continuous charging and wired Ethernet at all times. So there are no connection and disconnection sounds when you do cross-point switching. The desktop icons and windows are not rearranged. Everything stays the same. You just press a button or you plug in a laptop and everything will be ready to use. And another part of this Keep Alive bundle of features is continuous Ethernet. So here you see the peripherals, which are at the moment switched to computer number 3 or input number 3, this HDMI laptop. Maybe this person is doing a presentation and is using the webcam, the keyboard and the mouse. But thanks to this USB Ethernet bridge, the person who is using this laptop is still connected to the Ethernet, or you can decide whether he should be connected to the internet. He can browse, he can do his emails or look for files on company servers, or basically just do his job in the background. Maybe that's the person writing a memo of the meeting, and he's writing a memo in a cloud service, Google Sheet or something like that, so he's always connected. So the Ethernet bridge is independent of the host switch. And I mentioned this toggling 5-volt function. The RoomKit Mini has a USB-C port, and if you connect that port to a computer, the RoomKit Mini will switch to a so-called webcam mode. I don't know if they call it webcam mode, we call it webcam mode. So it goes, the WebEx service of RoomKit Mini goes into do not disturb mode, and the touch then also becomes locked. But maybe that person just wants to use the peripherals and get some charge or get Ethernet connection. So he connects to Taurus UCX, which would mean that the RoomKit Mini would switch to webcam mode, but maybe the person doesn't want to do that. So he can just disable USB power or this so-called V-bus to the RoomKit Mini, which means the RoomKit Mini will go back to WebEx mode, and the person can do a video conference using the RoomKit Mini as a hard codec. So we can disable that 5 volt.
Hey.
And finally, user notifications. So USB has a so-called billboard functionality. With Taurus UCX, if you connect a USB-C source and for whatever reason the laptop cannot enter DisplayPort alternate mode and start sending video, it can look for this so-called billboard message, which is stored in Taurus UCX, and show that on the screen of the laptop or the screen of the computer. And we can configure this notification and say display connection might be limited. Make sure the DisplayPort device you're connecting to is supported by your PC. So there's some bit of troubleshooting right there and then when you connect the laptop and for whatever reason it cannot enter DisplayPort alternate mode. So that's a USB function that we can take advantage of by using it in Taurus UCX. So all this is just the beginning. As Jason mentioned, a lot more is coming. The room automation functions, so these ports will become active with the future firmware release. The secure Ethernet features and the Dante version, they're all coming. And we have a really big roadmap for functions and device types. And we are continuously developing Taurus UCX, the platform and the devices. So now is the time to start typing your questions using the questions panel, because those were the details I wanted to share with you today. But to start you off, I have a collection of frequently asked questions, which are best answered by using visuals, so I collected them here. The number one question we got asked is, what type of USB-C cable should I use in UC rooms, or should I use it with Taurus UCX? The first answer, use the cable that comes with the device. But if you don't want to use it, or you lose it, or it breaks, and you want to look for other types of cables, then you need to know this. USB Implementers Forum, or USB IF, defines 2 types of cables. The first one is so-called charging cables, but we call it charging cables. For example, the cable that comes with MacBooks, they are for charging, not for super speed USB functionality. They do provide USB 2.0 functionality, which is mandatory. They cannot skip that. They can support 3 amps or optionally 5 amps, so 60 watts to 100 watts of charging, but they're really meant for charging the laptops and not for super speed USB functionality. If you have one of these cables, because you're watching on a Mac, then you can actually take a look inside the connector and see that there are pins missing. These are the super speed pins, which would be required for DisplayPort alternate mode operation. So these cables will not work for DP alt mode. The other type of cable is called a full-featured USB-C cable. There's nothing in between. They're charging cables and full-featured cables. Anything in the middle is not a standardized cable. So a full-featured cable has all the pins inside the plug and all the wires inside the cable. It also has a chip inside called the E-marker, which lists the capabilities of the cable. They can be 3 amp or optionally 5 amp cables, and they usually support alternate modes. This is the type of cable you need. This is the type of cable we supply. And if you're looking for a cable yourself, just look for full-featured. Other optional USB-C features include Thunderbolt. As I mentioned, USB-C is just the connector type, the connector shape. It can be a Thunderbolt cable. If it's a passive cable, it will work, but it's overkill. So it's too expensive and it's too short for these applications. So stick with a full-featured USB-C cable. When we tell people that these are the 2 types of cables that are out there, they ask us, can I look inside the plug to tell what kind of cable it is? If you see pins missing, then it's for sure a charging cable and it won't work. If you see this, you cannot be sure. Maybe the manufacturer of the cable bought plugs which have all these pins populated, but inside the cable, those wires are not populated. So a cable like this Might be USB 2.0, it might be USB 5 gig cable or 10 gig cable, so Gen 1 or Gen 2. You cannot be sure, you need to test it. If you see this lightning icon, then you can be sure that it's a Thunderbolt cable, but as I mentioned, they are for Thunderbolt operation. They are too expensive and too short for these DisplayPort alternate mode applications. And as Jason said, we supply tested and guaranteed to work cables at the moment at a length of 1 meter and 2 meters, but we're also looking hard for longer options, both passive and active optical cables. Next question, can I connect a Thunderbolt laptop or USB 4 laptops coming in the future to Taurus UCX? The answer is yes. All Thunderbolt laptops support DisplayPort alternate mode, so you can connect them to Taurus UCX using the right cable, and they will work just fine. When two laptops are connected to Taurus UCX, is 30 watts of charging enough for each? Yes, 30 watts is enough to at least maintain battery level. If you have just one computer connected, it will get 60 watts of charging. That's more than enough. If two laptops are connected, they will use 30 watts each. But the typical applications that you use in UC rooms include VC software like Zoom, Teams, Skype, Meets, or just do PowerPoint presentations or Excel sheets for your sales report. On the MacBook side, you use FaceTime or Pages or Keynote, whatever. Both laptops will actually charge because these applications are not really CPU or GPU intensive. If you do video editing in UC rooms, then of course it's going to use a lot of power and the battery might deplete, but slowly because the laptop still gets 30 watts of charging. Noise levels. These devices are installed in UC rooms, so there's a question how loud they are. Taurus UCX has a fan inside, which will have active control. So if they are mounted under the desk or somewhere which has air moving around, then the fan will stay off. So it's going to stay completely silent. If you build it into a cabinet or somewhere where airflow is restricted, then the fan is going to kick in, but the fan noise will be quite low. So Taurus UCX meets NC30 and NR30 requirements. The fan is actually running right now, and it's just 1 meter or 3 feet away from me, and I cannot hear it, and my hearing is good. And lastly, video conference software are mostly using 720p or 1080p or even lower resolution, so why use 4K cameras? Well, these cameras, if they're installed in meeting rooms, they need to be high resolution because they usually have auto zoom for the participants or even the person who is talking, and they need to provide a sharp enough image. So they don't have 4K because that's the thing people want. They're 4K because that's an additional feature because these are meeting room cameras. And additionally, VC software might evolve, so we might see somebody offering 4K video quality at some time in the future. And you can of course use these cameras for local recording. Maybe you want to do a sales pitch or something, then you can utilize the full resolution of the webcam. So those are the most commonly asked questions towards us. And now it's time for your questions. I hope you have many. So I will open up the questions panel.